Good morning, friends, and welcome to New Garden Friends Meeting. Here at New Garden Friends Meeting, we take the work of welcome very seriously. You are welcome here among friends. No matter where you may be on your spiritual journey, there is a place for you here at New Garden Friends Meeting. Back when we were worshiping together in person before the pandemic, it was often our practice for us to take time at the beginning of meeting for worship, before worship started or just after worship started, for us to greet one another. It was an opportunity for us to exchange handshakes and hellos and hugs and greet our friends and our neighbors and also newcomers. And I would like to invite you to do that same thing this morning in our digital space. So if you are worshiping with us this morning on Facebook, please greet one another in the comment section under the video. If you are worshiping with us on Zoom this morning, please greet one another in the chat section. If you are watching the recording of worship, this is an opportunity for you to make a note to yourself to reach out to another person at New Garden Friends Meeting and share a greeting and a hello. It's so important that we continue to love and support one another during this time of social distancing and isolation. And the community that we build here digitally makes a difference in our lives. Friends, I have a reading to share with all of you this morning. It's from the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, verses 21 through 31. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version, although I have gone through an ungendered God within the text. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundation of the earth? It is God who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent for all to live in, who brings princes to naught and make the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are the rulers planted, scarcely are they sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth, when the Spirit blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me? Who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? God, who brings their host and who numbers them, calling them all by name, because God is great in strength and mighty in power. Not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob? Why do you speak, O Israel? You say, my way is hidden from the divine, and my rights, they're disregarded by God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The divine is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth, and God does not faint or grow weary, and God's understanding is unsearchable. The divine gives power to the faint. The divine strengthens the powerless. Even youths will faint and will grow weary, and even the young can fall exhausted. But those who wait for God shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk on and not grow faint. This has been another incredibly emotionally charged week. I know that many friends here at New Garden Friends Meeting were holding our country in the light as we approached Wednesday and then throughout the day. I know that anxiety was high after the storming of the Capitol several weeks ago, and many of us, myself included, were bracing for the possibility of further violence. Thankfully, as a country, we have made it through that transition of power. We are on the other side of the inauguration, and it feels as if everything has changed, and also as if nothing is really so different. The pandemic still rages all around us. Death and illness are constant and continual parts of our lives. And of course, the work of mercy and peace is still as pressing as always. It continues to be our responsibility, no matter who occupies the White House, for us to advocate for a world that is more just. Still, this morning feels like a good morning to be hopeful. I look at how our democracy stands, and I feel hopeful. I look at how many people here in Guilford County have been vaccinated or will be vaccinated in the next several weeks, and I feel hopeful. I think about the new diversity among the leadership of our country, and I feel hopeful. It was this sense of hopefulness that called me to this scripture passage, this one from Isaiah, that I shared with all of you this morning. This passage is ultimately about God's faithfulness and about the nature of God and God's work. This is a hopeful passage. It points our hearts again toward the promise that the divine will be with us always, and that God's work is unrelenting and irresistible. The divine is described in this passage as vast, the creative power of the universe, the wideness of the sea, the multitude of the stars. God is expansive. It is God who sits above the circle of the earth. Its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. God who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent for all to live in. This expansiveness is compared in this passage to the power of rulers of our world, princes and kings and queens, perhaps especially tyrants, presidents even. The powers of our world, no matter how great their power might seem in the moment, this passage reminds us it is fleeting. The reminder here is that systems of power, the power that is so often corruptible, power that is used to oppress, this power is small compared to the power of the divine. The divine's promise rings loud in the tumult of our world. The divine's promise and faithfulness cuts through the pain and the mess, all of the many ways that humans find to hurt one another. I don't want to downplay, and I don't think this passage does, downplay the horror and suffering that can be caused by those who are in power. I think the last 4 years has taught me in a whole new way how much suffering can be caused by a small group of immoral people who are given power. We have seen this play out over and over again in the history of our country. We see the ultra-rich profiting from the poor. We see those with privilege profit and flourish at the expense of Black Americans. We see heterosexual people enjoy comfort and approval that is never afforded to our gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, asexual neighbors. All of these systems of power and subjugation in our world, this isn't small. It causes very real death and horror and pain. Systems of oppression cause very real suffering, pain, and horror on a daily basis in our country. And the trauma that is caused by these systems of oppression is not only widespread in the moment, but is also generational, causing pain for generation upon generation. And yet the promise of this passage is that even in the face of monumental generational suffering and evil, even in the face of that evil that feels so great to us, that it is nothing compared to the vastness of God's love, that it is as small as a weed blowing away in the wind. It is a reminder that the divine is tenacious and undefeatable, that love is at work in our world at all times and cannot be deterred. And what is the work of the divine in this world? What is this work that is so undefeatable, so tenacious, and so resilient? This passage from Isaiah is so beautiful in how it describes the work of the divine. Have you not known and have you not heard? The divine is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth, and God does not faint or grow weary, and God's understanding is unsearchable. The divine gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. It is the strengthening of the powerless that is the work of the divine. This is a powerful reminder of how love is at work in our world, toppling systems of oppression, building instead systems that uplift the meek and the powerless, the lowly and the overlooked. God's work is about liberation. The Spirit is showing up for love and for justice in our world. God's faithfulness to the poor and to the injured is unfailing. God is here for those who have been hurt by the world. God is all about the work of mercy. God is partnering with us so that we can slowly reweave the fabric of our world. When I think about the work of justice, I think about how easy it is to grow weary in this work. The work of peace and justice can make us seem so tired. It can make us so exhausted. It can be defeating. It is easy to feel defeated by how great evil is. It is easy to be tired when we see greed winning over and over and over again. It is easy to feel hopeless when we see how much suffering is in our world. There are sometimes when I look at all of the adults around me and all I see is pain. Because we humans are hurting in so many different ways. When we see the gross and horrific racism of our country, when we feel the sting of capitalism in our world that is serving only the ultra-rich, when we watch children who are hungry and hurt, who are languishing at our borders, when we think of our neighbors here in Greensboro who sleep rough on the streets every night, it is easy to feel weary. And to that weariness, the words of this passage from Isaiah are like a balm, a reminder that God's love is unfailing and faithful. God shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not grow faint. This is a reminder that love does not fail, that love does not grow weak. It is also a reminder, in the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Or, in the words of the inaugural poet Amanda Gorman, there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. This passage holds the reminder of the heart of our faith, the reminder that love wins. And when we are overcome by doubt or by fear or by grief or by pain, when it feels like trauma or simply exhaustion is breaking us apart, the living presence is with us. Love is with us when we grow weary. I was reminded this week of how undefeatable love is, and several times this week I turned to this passage from Isaiah, but I also turned to the words from Romans 8, chapter 8, verses 31 through 39. What's interesting about these words is that they spoke to me so deeply this week, and they were the same words that spoke to me deeply shortly after Trump was elected 4 years ago. If God is for us, as God always is when we are filled with love, then who is against us? I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation will separate us from the love of God. May we take these words from Isaiah into our week and into the weeks to come, into the uncertainty of how our world is changing in 2021, into the ongoing fight for justice in our country, into the unfolding of the pandemic, into whatever evil will come in the next weeks and months and years. And may we be hopeful, not just today, but in the days to come. When we are weary, may we feel renewed. And as each day dawns, may we remember again the tenacity and promise of love. When we despair, when we grow faint, when weariness is our portion, may we feel lifted up by the living presence. Friends, remember again this morning the good news of our faith, that love has won, that love is winning, and that love will win.